Extra time.
Hello and welcome back to the Extra Time podcast. This week we're a fresh lineup. Joining me, sorry, I'm feeling pretty poor from the weekend, I must say, but I'm joined hopefully in better spirits by Chris Hamill and Dougie Critchley. Chris, good to have you back on the Extra Time pod. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, like I was just telling you before we went live, I did a leg day at the gym yesterday with a personal trainer, and I've, subsequently walking around like a myself. So not a great start to the week. But yeah, working on my pathetic little body. Hopefully by the time summer comes, it will look nothing like it currently does. What about you, Dukes?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed deadline day yesterday. Sunderland signed 2 players from Bayern Munich, which doesn't happen every day. So that's pretty exciting for us. And excited, ready for the pod.
Love that, yeah. In similar vein, I woke up to see Fulham had signed Nathaniel Chalobah and Domingos Quinoa.
Good pick up.
Quinoa. I was going to say quinoa, but I'm not sure that's the correct.
That'd be very odd brand.
I've loved it if we'd signed someone called quinoa. I'd have been straight on the shirt, but yeah, buying that. No, anyway, we're not here to talk about Fulham's transfer business because, wow, what a deadline. What a deadline day. I feel like this was up there with one of the very best that we've seen in a while. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but so many stories, late night drama, extensions needed to be made in order to get sort of deals pushed through the window. Some frankly outrageous deals, if you ask me. I mean, Chris, what's your lasting impression of the sort of the havoc we saw on Sky Sports News, etc. last night?
I sort of tuned out around 10 o'clock because, I thought it was quite clear at that time that Celtic's transfer business was done. I was fairly disappointed as well with the exit of Ryan Christie, who we got $2.5 million for, despite only having 4 months left on his contract. So decent fee for that, but disappointed at the complexion of our midfield. So I stuck Vigil on, the new BBC series with Martin Compston. I just kind of let my phone tick away in the background. FootMob was keeping me up to date, and then sort of woke up and we'd signed another centre half. So yeah, I was fairly underwhelmed at the end of the window, and then pleasantly surprised this morning.
I guess Chris, we could just start with you on one. Obviously, Odsonne Edouard. It was something that we always knew he might go this summer, and it's gone right down to the wire. I'm amazed it's gone right down to like the last half an hour of that deadline day window for him to be snapped up by none other than Crystal Palace, who have pulled off a pretty exceptional transfer window all round. I mean, first of all, how do you feel about that move as a Celtic fan? But also, like, if you're Odsonne Edouard, is this really what you thought you were going for after sort of everything that he's achieved so far in his career?
I don't begrudge him the move, that's for sure. Like, he's given us 4 years very good service, and I think Celtic sell that pathway to younger players. Like, this is very on brand for us, and you can't really ask for much more than 4 very good seasons from a prospect who you're looking to sell on for twice the fee, and that's what's happened in this instance. Like, he's gone for between 15 and 20 mil. I think we know that the fee up front is a little bit less than that. It's around 14, 15, possibly rising to 18, 19, and Celtic actually get to keep all of the additional money that comes in when certain criteria is met. I think they've been quite smart there because PSG were due around 40% of the profits that we made from Odsonne Edouard. And of course, that came into play after the £9 million fee we paid him. So PSG set to land about 2 mil from that. Celtic taking home the rest. Yeah, 2 mil. That's enough to pay Messi's wages for 3 weeks. Such is the sickening landscape of football these days. So yeah, I mean, he maybe expected a bigger club to come in for him. Of course, Arsenal have shown a strong interest in the past. We've turned down a sizable bid from West Ham in the past as well. But Crystal Palace, this fits in with their recent sort of signings, doesn't it? Their profile of signing has been very young. It's been very ambitious. They might have a rocky 12 months ahead of them. But they've acquired a player who's completely different from the striking options they've got at current. And Yeah, someone with amazing pedigree as well. I mean, 86 goal contributions in 90 league starts. Last season averaging well over 4 shots, 3.3 of which came inside the penalty area. And just to give you a point of reference, only Ben Teke took over 2.1 shots at Palace last season, and half of those were headers. So they've got a different profile of striker in there. Someone quite predatory, someone who's capable of linking up with Zaha, who's jinky around the box, who's going to ask different questions of Premier League defenders. And I think they've got themselves a really good deal. Admittedly, this only works. He's only a good player if they become a little bit more, possession orientated, and they get the ball to him in the final third for him to do all his good work from that left-hand side, right? Because they've not been particularly entertaining at the start of the season. Conor Gallagher's come up with a couple of decent goals, but they're averaging the lowest amount of shots in the Premier League at current on a measly 6.7. So he is joining a shot-shy side. They do need him. Obviously, they're missing Eberechi Eze, who's one of their chief ball progressors last season. So he probably will be thrown in at the deep end, but I think Palace fans are going to be really, really pleased. And ultimately, Celtic got a good price for someone who was in the last year of their contract. But he will be sorely, sorely missed, even if he's been sort of out of sorts for maybe the last 6 or 7 months. But
yeah. Well, the future looks pretty bright for Celtic. If you look at some of your new additions in that front line, certainly you've got this new guy that's coming in from VV Venlo over in the Netherlands. So yeah, it's quite exciting to see what Ange can do next with that Celtic lineup. But just a quick final word on Crystal Palace, Diggs, because there's actually so much pressure on Patrick Vieira to get this team to blend together as quickly as possible, because it's so cutthroat, in my opinion, the Premier League. I'm nervous for them still. I mean, they've made all these amazing additions, driven down the average age of that starting 11. That counts for nothing if they can't sort of get points on the board. And as we said there, they struggled to score in their first 2 games. Conor Gallagher's not really the guy you want to be popping up with the goals. We're not seeing Mateta. He doesn't look like he's settled fully in English football, despite being here for sort of, over 6 months now. How much pressure do you think there is on Vieira to hit the ground running? Because I think the signing of Odsonne Edouard, which is superb in our opinion, we've talked about him lots on Continental Club, lots on the sort of the podcast. There's a lot of pressure there for him to get that team up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah, big time. I think he hasn't played that much football recently compared to what he was, first name on the team sheet at Celtic prior to sort of January time. Hasn't played that much football. And the problem with Patrick Vieira is that quickly, if they don't pick up more points quite soon, Frank de Boer's name starts getting banded around, and it's just a difficult position to come in after Roy Hodgson, who I don't think had a single week in the relegation zone after his first 6 months at Crystal Palace. So I think Patrick Vieira, that name, that predecessor, Frank de Boer, lingers on, and Roy Hodgson is just a difficult man to take over from when you lose, eight players in the end out of contract, big names leaving like Gary Cahill, Andros Townsend, players like that who carried a lot of experience, and without one of their main creators in Eberechi Eze out, as Chris mentioned, it could be a little tricky for the first 6 months. But I back them. I think there are comfortably 3 worse teams if that team on paper starts clicking.
Dukes, what do you think to the fact that they went for Eddie Nketiah first? It appeared that he was above the Arsenal striker, above Odsonne Edouard in the pecking order, which actually pissed me off a little bit. I felt a little bit put out by that fact.
I think it was a little strange as well, to be totally honest. I think Eddie Nketiah has a phenomenal record at youth level. Obviously, I think he's England under-21 all-time top goal scorer, and has done well for Arsenal on occasion as well. But Odsonne Edouard, with 4 years of great performance for Celtic, a few games for PSG before that, I believe, as well. Much bigger calibre in terms of what he's done in Europe as well than Eddie Nketiah. I was a little surprised by that, and I think Odsonne Edouard for £16 million potentially rising is a much better deal than Eddie Nketiah when he was being. I think Arsenal were asking for 20. But Arsenal's failure to get rid of their deadwood effectively this window is what really holds them back at the moment. They are such a poor selling club.
Oh my God!
Ever since, for the last 5 or 6 years, Alexis Sanchez, Ozil leaving, Ramsey not getting big fees for any of these players. Some of their best players of the last 5-6 years, Cazorla too. They've been unlucky in some instances, but they've got to start selling better.
Yeah, I think we've got a explained video, haven't we, about sort of Arsenal's troubles in the market. But yeah, tough times for Maitland-Niles certainly over there. Yeah. But if we move on to the other big story of the evening, which as big as Odsonne Edouard to Crystal Palace may be, we can look at the.
So why are you laughing?
Not at all. I'm looking at the wildness, which is this Saul Niguez, Atletico Madrid, Antoine Griezmann, the switch around there. First, Dukes, I saw on Twitter, you're not 100% sold on Saul Niguez to Chelsea as a proposition. We talked about it last week, and actually I think Pat said that Chelsea is probably the best place for Saul to go to, because it's the kind of club where he's not a classic CDM, is he? He puts in sort of strong defensive numbers, but he's very versatile in where he can play, and he's not the kind of guy that was just going to sit in front of the defence, which is perhaps what Manchester United are more looking for. At Chelsea, that is the kind of place where you will see Saul bomb forward on some of his mazy runs and get more involved in the creative play. In that regard, it does look like a good fit for the player. But I mean, I understand your reservations perhaps about whether or not he's even going to fit into this team sort of on a regular basis.
Yeah, my thinking was just, if he's going to be fourth choice, which for me he will be, based on last season at least, because he is a phenomenal player, but he's just not been quite at it for the last 18 months or so. Played in a variety of positions under Simeone as well. But for me, he's not an improvement on Kovacic, let alone Jorginho and Kante. But to caveat that, by the end of this season, Kante and Jorginho will both be over 30. And if Saul Niguez for a €5 million loan, they've got that 40 million option to buy, and he'll already be fitted into that system at 26. He's probably he bridges that gap between the Jorginho and the Kantes and the Conor Gallaghers and the Billy Gilmores as well. So I'm not totally against it. I just don't know whether for Saul Niguez it's personally the best move, because for me he'll be fourth choice when everyone's fully fit. But we've seen over the last 12 months as well, or 18 months in particular, how regularly Kante gets injured. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of game time to go around. They've got the Club World Cup as well. Obviously the Champions League. They've got 5 competitions to play in with the Super Cup as well. So yeah, there's going to be plenty of game time. And he is a great player. He just hasn't been quite at it in the last 12 months or so.
Big loss for Atletico. He was on massive wages, and I think that's why they were quite desperate to move him on. Around €300,000 a week mark. So they obviously wanted to free up that spot for a certain Antoine Griezmann. Barcelona, one of the most interesting transfer windows I could possibly remember. Moved on about 11 players I saw in total. You know, it was a big fire sale going on there. So Cazorla go to Getafe, Trincão's come to Wolves, Junior Firpo to Leeds, Elias Moriba, he went to RB Leipzig. That's a real shame, isn't it, really, from sort of a youth perspective for Barcelona. But they just needed to get the money in. And now what we've witnessed is Antoine Griezmann. He's sealed a sort of very last-minute move back to Atletico Madrid. A lot of people are calling this one of the most disastrous transfers in history in terms of Griezmann going to Barcelona in the first place, in terms of the fact they've had to take out loans to facilitate him even arriving. It was very much Bartomeu. He was desperate to bring him in many ways. And now he's going back on a loan option with a €40 million sort of option to buy there. Shades of Luis Suarez to Atletico, this one, Chris. What do you make of this whole thing? Because we could do a whole podcast on just how, frankly, crazy this single transfer is.
Yeah, we could. Just firstly to touch upon Saul Niguez, I'm completely with Dougie on this. I don't know how Manchester United have allowed this to happen. And anyone that thinks he would have been inhibited in that Manchester United side just needs to look at the sort of the makeup of their midfield, because he would have taken Scott McTominay's place, who's given a little bit more license to roam, isn't he? I mean, if Fred isn't protecting the back four and pressing people like a mad dog, then I don't really know what his role is at Manchester United. So I think he would have improved that double pivot tenfold. And he's contributing. I think he's contributed to a goal every 5 games during his athletic career. So would have offered much more of a goal threat than Scott McTominay. Just smarter positional awareness. Manchester United's passing lanes at the start of this season have been completely disastrous. When Southampton pressed them at St Mary's, they looked like they didn't know what to do with the ball, and it was just like if Luke Shaw wasn't going to bomb down the line with it, then they looked completely clueless as to how to get it to that talented front line. So I think he really would have aided with that. So yeah, a little bit perplexed why he's gone to sit on the bench at Chelsea. And who would I would back, both Jorginho and Kante, particularly Jorginho, who's never relied on physicality, to last beyond the age of 32, 33 at the top level in that Chelsea midfield. Anyhow, maybe not Kante playing that new role under Tuchel where he's literally like an anti-10. Maybe he'd have to fall back a little bit as his legs wore down, but still, he could quite feasibly find himself in a similar situation at Stamford Bridge. Yeah, back to Antoine Griezmann then. I mean, 22 goals for 108 million. That's 22 league goals. One Copa del Rey, and he's had to watch all of his mates win La Liga in the process. So it's just been a transfer that's not been good for any party. And like you said, it's come at a £65 million loss. And it's not even an obligation to buy, it's an option, according to Fabrizio Romano at the very least, which is just adding insult to injury, because say he gets injured or he just doesn't play well, he's going to depreciate as an asset, and Atleti can just ship him back. 40 mil. I mean, that's how much Barca paid for Paulinho, isn't it? The mind absolutely boggles.
I think he's going to do really well back at Atletico. I think he got like 20 goal involvements in the league last term. I feel he was always under the shadow of Lionel Messi there, always under the shadow of kind of this disastrous situation that's been going on at Barcelona. I have a feeling when he's back amongst sort of the familiarity of Atletico Madrid, I think he could really succeed alongside Mateus Cunha. Angel Correa's obviously had an incredible start to the season there. I think he's almost...
Yeah, Rodrigo de Paul.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be no shortage of sort of chances created in that midfield, is there? João Felix as well. Like, there's a lot of creativity in there that will be looking to put him in. Like you said, his numbers were very good before he departed for Barcelona, and Barcelona bringing in Luuk De Jong as a replacement. Just I mean, I think people labelling him a Newcastle flop, and I know he didn't score in 8 starts there, is a little bit misleading. I think it's a bit unfair to a guy who's carved out a very good career for PSV in the Eredivisie. I think he was contributing to a goal like 0.85 goals a game, so it wasn't just a finisher there. He was also a very adept provider. So I think that's a little bit wide of the mark, that criticism. But yeah, 19 goals in 94 appearances for Sevilla, like turned 31 this year. Only really thrives in systems that like cross-heavy systems, because he's absolutely formidable with his head. So it's got me wondering if Koeman is just going to try and replicate his Everton at Barcelona. We might be set. The Barcelona fans might be set for very depressing times this season. But yeah, it's just all a little bit like I tweeted this last night. We now live in a world where West Ham are conducting better transfer business than Barcelona. So I'm not really sure what that looks like in the future, but it's scary times, mate.
Well, I mean, I'm not as doom and gloom as Barcelona as perhaps other people. I think Memphis is unbelievable. I think he's such a good forward. Obviously, there's a lot of weight on his shoulders now to sort of be that talismanic figure they need, certainly in the attack, in the absence of Ansu Fati. But yeah, this Luuk De Jong transfer... Dougie, you can only see it as like a stopgap, surely. Like 10 goals in the last 2 league seasons for Sevilla. I was looking at some of his stats. He wins a lot of aerial duels. He's quite a busy forward in terms of sort of putting himself about. But it's hard to get enthusiastic by this deal at all, especially if Antoine Griezmann does go on to achieve a lot with Atletico or help deliver another title. Or, I mean, even to caveat that, do you just think Barcelona, like, going for the title is not even their concern necessarily this year? It's just about sort of staying relevant within the top 4?
I think it was probably about trying to survive as a club, really, and not go completely bankrupt at stages this summer. But I was really surprised by this deal. I just didn't see it happening. I thought after all the leadership group had taken those pay cuts, which allowed them to register new players, I just didn't see them losing another Griezmann, in the final hours of the window. And I would have much rather lose Coutinho than Griezmann, to be totally honest, as well. Because you've gone from Suarez, Griezmann, Messi as your sort of forward options with Ousmane Dembele 2 years ago, to Aguero, Luuk De Jong and Martin Braithwaite as your 9s. And, it's a lot of pressure on Memphis Depay. You talked about, the situation there. Like, poor guy, he's probably been brought in under slightly false pretenses. I don't think he probably dreamt of lining up alongside Luuk De Jong, despite the fact that they've probably played with each other at the Netherlands level for a few times. But Luuk De Jong's never scored over 10 league goals outside of the Eredivisie, which is just quite damning. I mean, he does have a great record there. He's helped them to numerous titles. both with Twente and PSV. But at, what is he, 30, 31, it's just not a long-term option. And with Aguero's injury issues, which don't seem to be abating, he's now got another 8 weeks out, I think, from that injury he sustained in training. You just don't think that they've got anywhere close to the forward options to challenge Atleti this year, or even Real Madrid, who have just strengthened with one of the best midfielders, or young midfielders in Europe, for a bargain price yesterday in Camavinga. Obviously they didn't get Mbappe, but with Bale and Hazard and Vinicius Jr. starting this season so well, and Asensio, it probably made more sense for them to wait another year and try and get him for free, which, seeing how keen he is to go to Real Madrid, I think seems pretty likely. So in terms of the La Liga title race, I just can't see Barcelona getting in the mix. I just don't think they've got the firepower.
Yeah, unless the people that have struggled in the last 18 months, like Coutinho and even like Hazard at Real Madrid, have the seasons of their life this season. It's a second sort of chance for an awful lot of people who have been cast aside, isn't it? Which is the only silver lining I can sort of pluck from this scenario.
If we look at one of the other players that Barcelona sold on in this window, we saw Emerson Royale have the shortest Barcelona career of most players in modern history, and yet they turned a substantial profit on him. And he's obviously gone to Spurs for about £26 million. Bear in mind, he only joined them on Barcelona on July the 1st for €9 million. He was part of that co-ownership agreement, wasn't he, with Real Betis, and then he got bought out there. A lot of people getting very excited about this transfer. We saw Serge Aurier released at the last moments that he could be a free agent. The Matt Doherty experiments failed. I think that's the bottom line on that one. I'm sad for Japhet Tanganga. I thought he's had an excellent start to the campaign. I thought this was really going to be, he was going to really benefit from the news of a managerial appointment there, having actually done pretty well under Mourinho originally. But before we sort of get into that, this is a great signing, isn't it, Chris? When it comes to Spurs, he really is sort of one of the standout right backs in La Liga. He's young, obviously not the finished article, but you got to think that Spurs have got a serious player on their hands for a decent amount of money too.
Yeah, I think I'd actually be more interested to hear both your thoughts on it. I think your repertoire's a bit more expansive now with your continental club showings. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about Emerson Royale. I did a little bit more digging on the likes of is Pape Matar Sarr, wasn't it, who joined from Metz, who was loaned back for the forthcoming season. I had one eye on him last season. I thought that was fantastic business. Showed promise defensively, didn't he? Put up almost 5 tackles, interceptions in his breakthrough campaign. Looked like a really good reader of play. Of course, made his international debut for Senegal as well. I thought that was like a really good move by Paratici, and will set them up well in the future, and support Højbjerg in that sort of shielding role. But yeah, as for Emerson, I feel like you guys have better insight than I do.
Oh, well, take it away, Dukes. I mean, he's sort of pretty prolific for tackles, interceptions, very busy, and also looks like he can sort of get down the other end and cause problems. I'm quite excited about this move.
Yeah, I think his successful cross percentage, or his successful crosses into the box, was one of the highest in La Liga 2 last year as well. Over the previous sort of 2-3 years, I always thought of him as a really defensively astute fullback, maybe not going to offer the most going forward, but I think he's developed that side of his game in the last year or two a lot better. And with Sergio Reguilón getting quite a lot of freedom to go up that left-hand side since he's joined Spurs, Emerson has that potential to tuck in. And then, if you're looking at sort of Tanganga can now go into the centre-backs as well, with Romero still struggling for fitness. Then they got Eric Dyer, Sanchez as well, and Reguilón. They've got a pretty good, at least on paper, side of a good back four there. My issue with Spurs is probably midfield depth. Obviously, Tango and Dembele doesn't seem like he's in Nuno's plans. Lo Celso, has his injury issues. He's going back to Argentina a lot this season as well. I think there's quite a few international friendlies for Argentina. So it feels like in terms of depth, and Harry Winks as well hasn't really pushed on over the last few years. I mean, I think that's generous, to be fair. I think he's stagnated beyond all belief, really. So outside of Skip, Højbjerg and Ali, they're already playing Ali in a midfield 3. There's just not that many sort of central midfield options, but I've been pleasantly surprised, by the sort of counter-attacking flair of Lucas Moura, who I've always thought is sort of really kind of struggled to kick on at Spurs, but he started very well under Nuno. Steven Bergwijn as well, looks like he's improved after a really challenging year under Mourinho last year as well. So Spurs are now pretty well set. Serge Aurier getting released on the last day. I probably would have released Matt Doherty, to be totally honest, but I think given the fact that they only paid, £15 million for him the season before, maybe it just made more financial sense to get rid of Serge Aurier. I think he didn't have long on his contract as well. But Serge Aurier has been a much maligned figure at Spurs, mainly due to his hot-headedness and his ability to give away penalties in stupid areas. But he wasn't actually as bad as many Spurs fans thought. I thought he was a reasonable servant for the club, yes. Just probably not good enough if they're trying to get back into the top four in the next 2-3 years.
No, completely agree. More little fun fact on Lucas Moura. He used to be my neighbour when he first moved to London. He lived next door to me for up in North London for a little bit, and I've never seen a man religiously wear Tottenham stash as much as him. I thought I was like, surely someone earning as much as you could branch out your wardrobe. Apparently not. But anyway, yeah, I completely agree. Emerson Royale, Spurs, decent business. Paratici, I think a bit of reservations about when he did come to Spurs about what he would bring, but I actually think on the whole, pretty satisfactory transfer window for the club. Ryan Hill as well. He looks like he's going to be a real live wire for them too. Yeah, obviously people like Lamela moved on, but I'm excited to see what Spurs can do this year. They've obviously hit the ground running in the Premier League too. If we just look at another flying fullback that has come to the Premier League, Dougie, I know you're as excited about this one as I am. I think Marc Cucurella to Brighton. They bought him for 18 million euros. He's sort of left wing back. He's sort of everything that Bordalas made, which was great about Getafe, sort of all action displays, sort of in your face kind of football. Cucurella he was like the guy that really led that charge there. I think he is going to be a superb addition for Brighton. I'm really excited for this transfer.
Yeah, tremendous engine, really fast as well. He was linked with Burnley as well. I thought Burnley was definitely not the right club for him. But Brighton, if they continue to persist with that 5 at the back system, which Potter has kind of made his own over the last 18 months, then yeah, Cucurella's going to be a really good asset on that left-hand side. Although, in fairness to him, Solly March, not a natural left wing-back, has done a pretty good job there. We've seen Pascal Gross fill in there as well this year, I think for sort of tactical reasons, if they're trying to change formation and bring, I think it was Robert Sanchez was coming into the back line at times. So, Potter's done all sorts in terms of that left wing-back slot, and now they've got, I think, one of the outstanding left wing-backs in La Liga. I think since Junior Firpo has gone to Barcelona, very few players have played in that left wing-back slot so effectively as Cucurella, and you'd have thought that with Jordi Alba now 31, I was quite surprised that they even bought Firpo, originally Barcelona, and didn't just use Cucurella long-term as an Alba replacement. But yeah, he was signed from Barcelona by Getafe for 11.8 million euros last year, ranked 5th for passes into the penalty area, 4th for crosses into the penalty area, recorded the most pressure in La Liga 2 years straight as well, so works really hard. Makes a lot of tackles, but also has a potential to slightly get his timing wrong, slightly get caught out as well. There are some question marks over his one-on-one defending, yes. But I think in terms of an attacking asset, Graham Potter has absolutely nailed this one. Yeah,
absolutely. That stat about pressures, 1,709 pressures in the last 2 seasons combined in La Liga. I mean, that's massive.
Did you say you enjoyed Getafe's style of play? Because I think only Getafe fans enjoy the football that Bordalas initiated in Madrid, because it was just kicking lumps out of people for 90 minutes and trying to keep like active play well below the 45-minute threshold. But I remember talking about Cucurella, I don't know if you were on the episode, Dukes, when he was at Eibar on like a really early edition of the Extra Time podcast. And he like his promise has been no secret, has it? And I don't think he's only missed a couple of games in the last season for Getafe. So he's been a constant. And I think it's a really good price for him, actually, yeah. I'm in complete agreement. I am looking forward to seeing him sort of flying down that left-hand side.
Yeah, I think kicking lumps out of each other's how I would describe the Sunday League football that I'm part of. So I think it's nice to find a team which is relatable in that regard. But
are you the English Bordalas? Are you going to get like work done when you're 55 so you look better than you did at 45?
I hope I don't age quite the way that he did in my mid years.
It's like Benjamin Button, mate.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see what he can do. But quick note on Brighton, Chris. You're a big sort of Graham Potter aficionado. They've had a pretty good window, I think it's fair to say, but perhaps a little light up front. That's my only reservation they have there. Moises Caicedo moved on. Logan Locadia, he's back from FC Cincinnati, where he frankly flopped. He wasn't good enough there. So there's a lot of pressure now on Molpe and Danny Welbeck, who, he's probably going to only be available half the season, let's face it. Great, I'm a big fan of Danny Welbeck, but it's just not the most reliable option. A lot of pressure on those two to bring in goals. Do you kind of share the same reservations about that?
Yeah, Aaron Connolly's there as well, isn't he? But he didn't look like a Premier League striker last season, that's for sure, and cost them big in a few fixtures, didn't he? Maupay started the season well, and I think what we've always said about Maupay is that he is a Premier League level striker and will get 10 to 15 goals given the sheer amount of chances that Brighton create. I was hoping, with Tariq Lamptey's return to that right hand side, that they would be a lot more threatening, because they looked a lot more of a goal threat with him in the starting 11. I don't know much about Enoch Mwepu from Salzburg. I mean, 23 million euros was not cheap, was he?
No.
Or Seymour, that's arrived from Slavia Prague, Scherpen, that's arrived from Ajax. Like, a lot of their transfers, I am fascinated to see how they pan out, because I just don't have any information on their background. So yeah, we just kind of have to trust that Potter's talent identification is on point. But I think after a £60 million outlay, they should be looking to improve on last season's showing pretty significantly.
Yeah, Abdullah Sima, that signing from Slavia Prague, that is fascinating. He's obviously gone straight on loan to Stoke City. See how well he does there. I could genuinely see him back in January if that all works out, because he looked like a real talent, certainly in the Europa League last season.
He's a right winger, right?
No, he plays centre forward in principle, but I think he can drop out to the wing as well. He was certainly playing centre forwards last season for Slavia down the middle. But yeah, real young talent. Like you say, with a lot of Brighton signings, we need to kind of wait and see what happens. But if we try and sort of rattle through some of the other big moves of the window, we saw obviously Burnley missed out on a fullback, but they did get Connor Roberts from Swansea for £2.5 million. Quite an attacking fullback actually by Burnley standards. Really sort of tackle numbers all sort of below one a game, but 5 goals, 7 assists for the Swans last year. I thought he looked really impressive at the Euros for Wales. So I think for that kind of money, I think Burnley have done pretty well there. But if we look at the other sort of big signing of actually by sort of as a one-off transfer, the second biggest signing, certainly for West Ham, that's Nikola Vlasic. He's come in from CSK Moscow. Dougie, you said you watched a bit of a compilation on him this morning. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd only caught glimpses of him playing in the Champions League or Europa League over the last few years, and he had quite a good record in Europe, I seem to remember. But yeah, I just wanted to check him out, see what he was up to in terms of his goal and assist highlights. Obviously, it's always a little minute watching an 8-minute highlights compilation of him, but he looked excellent, to be fair. Quite squat, fairly looked like he had quite a good turning circle as well, but not. I mean, I was talking to an Everton fan on Twitter yesterday, and I was like, because I put out something like, I think Everton fans kind of instantly regretted letting him go when Sam Allardyce came in, because he seemed to be at least Europa League level for CSKA Moscow. And they said, no, he was too lightweight at the time, but he didn't look lightweight at all in this highlights package I was watching. Really good finisher from various areas as well. Takes a lot of shots per game, over 4 shots per game for CSKA. So slightly different to Lingard, who is more about sort of, progressing the ball upfield before getting into those areas. But yeah, quite right-footed as well. 1.7 dribbles per 90, 2.9 key passes. Clearly just too good for that Russian Premier League. You get some of those players that go to, an Eastern European league, for example, or Ukraine, or, Croatia, etc., and they're just a little too good by the end. He's only 23 years old, though, so he's got a lot of room to grow, but I think they might have slightly overpaid.
Yeah.
I've got down here that it was £25.7 million plus 7.7, but I also saw that it could rise to as much as 38, which for CSKA Moscow is for West Ham is a hell of a lot of money. And you'd expect that Man United could have been tempted to sell Lingard for that price, but I know that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was pretty impressed with Lingard during pre-season prior to him contracting COVID. So maybe they're just thinking Lingard can give us, more game time here and contribute here. But yeah, 19 appearances under Sam Allardyce at Everton, didn't really show much interest in him, so shifted off to CSKA Moscow, and he's done pretty well. 12 goals and 5 assists in 2019-20, 11 goals and 5 assists in 2021. I've instantly made a waiver move for him in our draft, our Football Daily draft team, hoping to get him, although I am top of the league. Humble brag there at the moment, so I'm unlikely to get it. But yeah, hopefully Vlasic to West Ham works out, because I think without they look a little short up front, to be totally honest, except for Mikel Antonio. If he gets injured, then I don't really know who their number 9 option is, to be honest, to come back in. Because I don't know whether Albion Ajeti, has he gone back to West Ham? I'm not even sure, to be honest. I don't know where their backup is. So Vlasic, there's a lot of pressure on him and Antonio to sort of hit the ground running. But West Ham have started the season exceptionally well, and with Fornals and Benrahma showing improved form from last year as well, I think West Ham fans can be, quietly optimistic that they can get somewhere close to that 6th place finish again.
Absolutely. I think, as you said, without going and signing another out-and-out sort of number 9 or centre forward to help Antonio, Vlasic is almost the next best option in terms of the runs that he makes. And arrives quite a lot in the box, and that's where the majority of his shots do come from. And actually bringing in Alex Kral from Spartak Moscow into the midfield as well. I've enjoyed his sort of entry video with his other Czech teammates, Soufal and Souček. So they've
Wasn't he another Souček signing? Isn't Souček basically West Ham's sporting director?
Agent Souček.
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving this Prague connection. I think it's so good for them. But yeah, West Ham, having looked like they had a bit of a stinker of a window a couple of weeks ago, have really turned it around, pulled off some big moves. Just a quick note on Ademola Lookman, who's gone to Leicester. Chris, obviously, as a Fulham fan, loved him last year, thought he was absolute class, but he was also class amongst a very sort of, in a team that struggled to be creative. I mean, Fulham were very good at passing the ball around and sort of looked more defensively reassured in the mid-season, but really struggled to score goals. Lookman was our kind of shining light. Because I know Dougie's got maybe some reservations over whether this is exactly the player that Rodgers should have been targeting, but I think Lookman could be pretty successful at Leicester, and certainly an upgrade on Jose Perez, although slightly different players.
I think what Dougie said is completely sensible. Like, why have Leicester signed another right-footed winger who likes to cut in from the left? Because that is, of course, what Harvey Barnes specialises in. Although they kind of lined up 4-4-2 against Norwich, with James Maddison just playing off Jamie Vardy. So maybe Brendan Rodgers is going to be a little bit experimental with his formation this season. But I think, like, the guy is, 22? He's only played 2,000 minutes plus once in a season. So who are we to say definitively, what he is? And I tweeted this yesterday because some sort of Leicester fans are asking me where he might fit into Rodgers' plans. And I said that, like, having watched Leicester, under Rodgers, Rodgers, I think, likes his service from the right-hand side to be quite traditional. I don't know if that's out of necessity because he's had Albrighton, he's had Perez out there, or if it is just because he likes it. But he tends to overload the left-hand side. Barnes arrives late in the box. When James Justin was playing left-back, he arrived late in the box. Maybe not so much with Luke Thomas, whose game management maybe meant that he was a little bit more conservative in his build-up. But I think that, we could see a relationship manifest down that right-hand side where Ricardo Pereira or Timothy Castagna underlap a little bit more, or, Lookman hits the byline a little bit more and stands it up to the back post. Of course, there's Kelechi Iheanacho as well, who's not a number 9, is he? He's kind of more of a 10 in that regard. I can imagine him linking up well with him if he plays with a 2 up front. What it does provide is options, and I think it would have been futile persisting with Jose Perez on the right hand side and simultaneously trying to maintain a place in the top 6. I think when you look at how Leicester finished various games last season, they were lucky to still be in with a shout for Champions League football, because there was 4 or 5 people in that starting 11 that were just not of Champions League calibre. And it's happening a little bit again in the back line in Johnny Evans' absence, isn't it? I know Yannick Vestergaard has come in, but again, a little bit uninspiring. I think they probably should have gone for Christopher Ajer, 7 years his junior, for around the same price, but that is neither here nor there. And Lookman, I mean, at Fulham, you'll know more about him than me, Henry, but was actually quite traditional with his build-up play, an awful lot of crosses, a very adept dribbler as well. So just a real handful. And And yeah, definitely adds something to Leicester's wide options.
What just quickly, because Dennis Praet, he left to join Torino. What do you think went wrong with him? Because I thought he never really got a fair shout at Leicester, and he sort of downgraded down to Torino at the first opportunity.
I just don't think we ever figured out what sort of player Dennis Praet was. Like, he sort of masqueraded as a number 10 for a while, despite his numbers never really suggesting he was a high-level number 10. He was probably more of an 8, but then Leicester had one of the best 8s in the league in Yuri Tielemans, sort of holding down that role next to Wilfred Ndidi in that double pivot. So he was just never really going to get a sniff there. Like, the deceiving thing about Dennis Praet is he's quite easy on the eye. Like, he's technically a very sound footballer.
Yeah.
And having been someone in football games that can look okay but isn't really affecting play, I often saw that with him. Like, I think that sort of summed up his time at Leicester. That sums up his time at Leicester quite well. Looking busy but not contributing an awful lot. I think it was an overpay in the first instance. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to Arsenal being interested in him, and Leicester haven't really ascertained anything from the deal. I don't know if there's an obligation or an option to buy for around 15 million euros that I saw, but if Leicester can recoup that money for someone that's 28 or near 28 now, then I'd be pretty pleased as a Leicester fan.
Yeah, Torino had a storming sort of deadline day, actually. They got Brecalo in from...
Joseph Brecalo?
Yeah,
nice.
They brought him to... And they also got Caputo in from Sassuolo, which I was quite surprised to see as well. Anguissa, obviously, he's left Fulham to go to Napoli, which is devastating. But, good luck to him. He's far too good for the Championship. Another guy that's gone to Italy, Dukes, who, when we were talking about preparing for this podcast, you were quite keen to talk about, was Mohamed Ihataren. He's sort of the PSV wonder kid that's gone to Juve for £5 million more or less. I read into this, and at PSV they feel like he's stumbled, maybe sort of failed to live up to his potential, and this is his fresh start. He's obviously going straight to Sampdoria on loan. What do you make of this move? Because it is one that it could go either way, couldn't it? It's quite fascinating in many ways, but it's been a bit tricky for him in recent seasons.
Yeah, I think the good thing for him is he's got that instant loan to Sampdoria. He's slightly more out of the spotlight, and Sampdoria haven't been the most exciting attacking team in recent years, so hopefully he can add a little bit there. Sometimes you see with players, particularly young players coming out of the Eredivisie, they take maybe a season or two. I remember Oussama Idrissi's gone to Sevilla. Didn't really do much last year, but he started this season much better under Lopetegui, with Sevilla doing really, really well at the start of this season. But Hataran's, his statistics at least for about 3 years ago looked exceptional. And he got 4 goals and 7 assists in the Eredivisie and Europa League in 2019-20. Very confident dribbler, could play in a variety of positions, was really confident with his shooting, but not wasteful at certain times as well. But that only fell to 3 goals and 2 assists last season. His shot creating actions dropped from 4.8 to 3. And it just felt like maybe he just needed a slightly new start, and he'd been sort of overtaken by Daniel Marlon, Noni Madueke as well last year at PSV. So there was a lot of competition and a really, great clutch of young wingers. But hopefully, he can kick on and become the player that he looks like he was going to be about 3 years ago in Italy.
Yeah, absolutely one worth following over there. All right, I mean, there's still so many transfers we haven't even touched upon. That's how crazy this deadline day was. We haven't even looked at Camavinga, his move to Real Madrid. I think that's pretty sensible. One slight reservation I have is the amount of money that Leeds United have paid for Daniel James. Chris, I feel like £26.2 million is a lot. I think he's class. I thought he was probably Wales' standout player at the Euros, but that's a lot of money for a winger. I have reservations over whether or not that is sort of worth it in the long run, despite how good he can be at moments.
Yeah, it is a lot of money, isn't it? Particularly when AZ Alkmaar are shedding Calvin Stengs and Myron Baldu for 15 and 17 million euros respectively. Atalanta are picking up Coop Miners. I know there's a totally different profile of player now, for 14 million euros. There's a lot of bang for buck out there. So when Dan James did go for 30 mil, which was covered most of the Varane transfer, it did seem a little bit like an overpay, but he's going to, I think, be utilised better at Leeds. I think he's going into a better coaching setup. Like, I think Ollie is probably okay at utilising finished articles, but when it comes to improving players, Bielsa's record blows him out of the water.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a really improved output from him, and just sort of all-round game intelligence from him. When you look at what he's done with perennial championship players beforehand. So I think it's just a good move for both parties. And if a £5 million overpay, means that Leeds get someone that they've wanted for 18 months, then I think they'll quickly come to terms with that. But yeah, not an awful lot more to add, to be honest, on Dan James. I'd rather talk about coop miners, but that might take us way over an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, we haven't even touched on
what a deal.
Takahiro Tomiyasu. Yeah, coop miners, that is outrageous. Well done to Atalanta there. But if we just look at it quickly at the Tomiyasu deal for Arsenal, I mean, this does look like it's got some potential with it. I mean, I saw Joe talking on Sky Sports about how Arsenal have managed to drive down the average age of their squads. Beirin's obviously gone to Real Betis, which, Dougie, you asked me about that on Continental Club the other week, and I didn't know that was a thing. So clear, maybe it's sort of a bit of inside.
Yeah, Dan's a Real Betis fan.
Inside knowledge on your behalf, and then we saw Reece Nelson go to Feyenoord. But I mean, what do you? Is this the man to shore up Arsenal's defence, or is that sort of an impossible task at this point?
To be honest, I don't watch Bologna week in, week out, so I'm not going to pretend that I've watched Tomiyasu week in, week out either. But from what I can gather from doing a sort of deep dive, or at least a dive, maybe not even that deep on his stats, he's a sort of no-nonsense defender. I think he's going to let, if he plays on the right as a right back, he's going to let Tierney bum forward. He was in the 99th percentile, so out of 100, he's ranked 99 for clearances and aerials 1. 80% tackle success rate as well, which is really, really solid, particularly if he's playing at right back against tricky left wingers. That's really, really solid. So I don't really know, to be totally honest. I think £60 million for a 22-year-old. This is the sort of signing we were suggesting Arsenal should have switched to a few years ago.
Yeah. They've
maybe waited a little bit long to do it, and the rebuild's going to be, quite painful necessarily. If they finish sort of 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th this year, I think that's a pretty good year considering the standard of or the age profile, at least in that squad. So it's going to be painful for Arsenal, but I just don't think they should make any trigger-happy decisions right now in terms of managerial changes. I just don't know what there is to gain unless you can get in someone like Antonio Conte. But even Conte, why would he go to Arsenal? And also, stylistically, it's so different from what they're trying to do. And at the moment, Arsenal keep on jumping around from different philosophies, different managing directors, different head of recruitment. And that's why you've got the mess that they've created over the last couple of years. So for now, I think they just need to stick with Edu and Arteta and try and get this ship righted back onto the top 4 direction.
I think Arteta has to go, personally. And
really?
I think, yeah. And next week, the Extra Time podcast, I think you've got a Patrick Van Straten special on the situation at Arsenal, which will be well worth tuning in for that one. All right, Chris, if you had to pick one deal from deadline day, which you think who made the smartest move on deadline day? What was the one that stand out for you?
On deadline day, okay, so not beforehand.
No.
Because I think Coop Miners was actually agreed the day before. There's been loads, man. Loads we've not spoke about. Like you said, Sabitzer, Samakin, Yaremchuk. I loved. I think Benfica are going to get a ton of goals out of that guy. Adley. I think AC Milan are loaning him back to Bordeaux, though, aren't they? Mate, there's just too many. Why pick? I'm actually going to go for Felipe Jota to Celtic because the guy has got an incredible hairline on him, so that's a huge tick against his name. Has a lovely tan, and it actually comes in all seriousness with a great pedigree. These are the sort of gambles that I can totally, I totally think Celtic should be making. He was valued at £9 million in 2019 after being Liga Pro Young Player of the Year. That's Benfica's reserves, and also. He was top goal scorer at the Under-19 Championships when Portugal won. I think they beat Italy 4-3 in the final. He was hugely influential in that campaign, and it was billed as the next big thing. And a lot of Benfica fans were saying to me he's widely perceived as one of the best youngsters we've ever produced. But then they've got a fair amount of talent on the wing blocking his progress. I think it's Everton Suarez, Darwin Núñez. And there's no shame in not getting minutes behind those guys, but there is a shame in his sort of career petering out. So hopefully Big Ange can save him, mate. If not, then he can always be like a top man model. The guy, lock up your daughters in Glasgow. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow, there we go. The other young Portuguese talent, Nuno Mendes as well. Gosh, PSG, what window? Maybe the greatest window.
I'm not even bothered mentally registering their window. It's just getting obscene.
Yeah,
it's
too much. Crazy. All right, Dukes, what would you say? What's the worst move of the deadline day if you had to pick?
Well, I'm trying not to take any offence to the fact that Chris rates hairline so high up his list, because I must be way down his list. But anyway, I'll put that to one side. I was going to mention Nuno Mendes as well for that fee, and then it's an option to buy as well.
Yeah.
I think it was a £6 million loan fee. I don't know why Sporting CP would agree to that when he was linked with £50-60 million moves to Man City for the last few months. Barcelona as well were linked with that move as well.
Did Sarabia go the other way?
Yeah, he's gone the other way on loan. Sarabia.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's a good pickup to be fair from them. I think he is a really good player, Sarabia. It's just sometimes players don't work out at these top clubs, and especially in that that depth of competition that he's got up front. But I think we touched on him earlier, but Ilyas Moriba as well. I'm intrigued to see how he does at RB Leipzig. Obviously Sabitz has left, but he's still got to compete with Konrad Lehmer, Kevin Campbell, Haidara, etc. So it might not be the season for Ilyas Moriba, but he looks like he's got something about him in limited minutes at Barcelona last term. So he's run down his contract. He wanted to move. Koeman didn't treat him particularly well. And off he goes. But I was disappointed that Ricky Puig didn't follow him out the door, to be totally honest.
Well, yeah, we saw...
At least on loan.
We saw Koeman send Umtiti out to the dogs, didn't he, the other day? So made him warm up just to get booed. That's some man management. All right, that's our extra time.
What was yours, Henry? No, I want to know yours before we wrap it up.
My favourite move?
All right, favourite and worst.
I'll give you my outside one. I think Gaëtan Laborde from Montpellier to Rennes. Rennes, he spent about £75 million in this window. He's a bit like Mikel Antonio. He's not going to score a ton of goals all the time, but he works so hard. And I actually think Rennes have done a great job sort of on their sort of classic yearly rebuild there. So yeah, watch out for that one if you are a Liga aficionado. And yeah, I'm quite excited to see. I'm not thrilled by Moise Kean back to Juventus, but on the flip side, I'm quite excited to see if he can try and get his career back on track too. So those are my other little takes from the window. But yeah, what a deadline day! Absolutely crazy stuff. Thank you, chats, for joining me to sort of dissect it all. As we said, we've hardly even mentioned anything. We haven't even been able to mention the fact that Real Madrid claim they put in a €200 million bid for Kylian Mbappe with 6 hours to go, sending Ilcha and Guita into an absolute meltdown situation. So yeah, that's a story for another time. But Chris, if they've enjoyed being with us today, what should the Football Daily fans go check out next?
Yeah, check out whatever video we put on screen right now, because the algorithm has dictated that is the best one for you. And yeah, one-on-one over on Euro Football Daily. Always great to have you over there. Make sure you dive into the comments. And yeah, the latest listicle on Football Daily. Top 10, that is, in our language.
Love it, Diggs. Anything from you?
We did 10 breakout stars set to explode this season. Not literally on Euro Football Daily yesterday or today. That would have dropped on Wednesday. So go check that out. It featured Vinicius Jr., Henry's favourite, Tino Livramento, etc., and much more.
Well, I wrote that script and I put Vinicius in it. So, just trying to
eating some humble pie,
trying to build some bridges between me and him. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. Anyway, thank you all for listening at home, whether or not that be on YouTube or on Spotify, whatever. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and yeah, keep joining us every week. We'll always be here. All right, bye bye.